Have you ever had something stolen from you by someone you trusted the most? Not a stranger, not an enemy, your own mother. That's exactly what happened to me. My name is Rachel Lewis. I'm 36, a single mom, and an event planner. I've worked my way up, balancing a demanding career while raising my 12-year-old son, Ethan. It hasn't been easy, but I've done everything I can to give him the kind of life I never had. Ethan's my world. And if there's one thing that makes him light up, it's theme parks. The rides, the magic, the feeling that for one day, anything is possible. So when my boss handed me 2 exclusive tickets to Disneyland's newest attraction, I knew exactly who I was taking. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something about my family. Because of this story, it was never just about tickets. It was about favoritism, betrayal, and karma catching up. I wish I could say my family was normal, that we were close. But growing up, there was always a clear divide. My mother, Linda, has always made it clear. My sister. Vanessa is her favorite. Vanessa is 3 years younger than me, and she's always been treated like royalty. She could do no wrong. And now, as an adult, she's married with 9-year-old twin daughters, Lily and Ava. My mother adores those girls, dotes on them, treats them like princesses. And Ethan? Well, let's just say he's never gotten that kind of love. I've heard the comments for years. Vanessa's girls are so beautiful. They're so well behaved. They remind me of myself at that age. But when it came to Ethan, he's a little quiet, isn't he? You should make him play sports. Boys shouldn't read so much. He's different. It was subtle, but it was there. The way she never seemed to be interested in what he loved. The way she would compare him to the twins like he was somehow less than. I had learned to ignore it over the years. But deep down, it hurt. And I knew it hurt Ethan too. So when my boss called me into her office that Friday afternoon, I wasn't expecting anything special. "Rachel, I just wanted to thank you for all the work you put into the last event." I smiled. Of course, it was a great project. She reached into her desk and slid an envelope across the table. "Disneyland is opening their new VIP experience next weekend, and I managed to secure a couple of passes. You and your son deserve it." I froze. Not just Disneyland, but the ultimate experience. VIP tickets. No long lines. Front row seats to the parade. A private dinner with the characters. I opened the envelope and stared at the glossy golden passes inside. This wasn't just a fun day at the park. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I felt a lump in my throat. This is incredible. Thank you. That night when I got home, I called Ethan into the living room. "I have a surprise for you." His face lit up. "What is it?" I held up the envelope. "Next weekend, we're going to Disneyland." For a second, he just stared. And then, "No way." He leapt up, practically shaking with excitement. "Are you serious?" "Mom, this is amazing." I grinned. "Not just that. These are VIP tickets. We'll get to skip the lines. Eat at a special restaurant. Even meet the characters." He threw his arms around me. "Best mom ever." And at that moment, it was all worth it. All the late nights, all the hard work. Just knowing that for one day my son would feel like the most special kid in the world. What I didn't know was that someone else was about to take that happiness away. Because while we were celebrating, my mother was already plotting. And the next time I opened that drawer, the tickets would be gone. The countdown has begun. 7 days until Disneyland. Ethan was practically vibrating with excitement. Every night at dinner, he'd bring up a new ride he wanted to go on, a new snack he wanted to try, a new character he wanted to meet. It was the happiest I'd seen him in a long time. But happiness, in my family, never lasted long. Because someone always found a way to take it. My younger sister, Vanessa, was the golden child. She always had been. She was the one my mom praised, the one she spoiled, the one who could do no wrong. It had been that way since we were kids. Me? I had to work for everything. my grades, my jobs, my career. Vanessa? She got handed things. When she got married, my mom and dad paid for the wedding. When she had twins, my mom practically moved in to help raise them. And me? When I had Ethan at 24, I got a lecture about how I should have waited for the right man. Over the years, I learned to stop expecting anything from my mom. But this time, she crossed a line I never thought she would. I had a 3-day work trip coming up. Nothing major. Just a few meetings with clients. I needed someone to watch Ethan. And since my mom lived nearby, I asked her. It was supposed to be simple. I didn't think twice about it. But the second I walked out that door, I made one big mistake. I trusted my mother. While I was away, Ethan, being the sweet, innocent kid he was, told my mom about the Disneyland tickets. He didn't think anything of it. Grandma, Mom, and I are going to Disneyland next weekend. We got VIP tickets. And that's when it happened. That night, after Ethan went to bed, my mother went into my room. She opened my drawer. She found the envelope. And she stole my son's dream right out from under him. She didn't even hesitate. She took out her phone and called Vanessa. I found something special, she whispered. Rachel has Disneyland tickets. VIP passes. Vanessa didn't miss a beat. Are you serious? I think your girls would enjoy them more than Ethan. Vanessa laughed. Obviously. My kids should get a special experience. And just like that, the deal was done. No remorse. No second thoughts. My mother had stolen from her own grandson, and my sister was happy about it. When I got home from my trip, Ethan ran to hug me. Mom, I missed you. I missed you too, buddy. I set my bags down, exhausted, but excited. We had less than a week, until Disneyland. And then Ethan's voice dropped. Mom, I can't find the Disneyland tickets. My heart stopped. What do you mean? I walked into my room, opened the drawer. The envelope was gone. I checked my bags, my desk, the kitchen counter. I tore through the whole house. Nothing. And then it hit me. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. Mom, did you take something? From my room? Silence. Then, in the most casual voice I had ever heard, she said, Oh, those? I gave them to Vanessa's kids. They'll enjoy them more than Ethan would. I felt my stomach drop. What? She sighed, like I was the one overreacting. Rachel, don't be upset. Vanessa's girls deserve a special experience. Ethan will get over it. I could hear my sister in the background, laughing. Yeah, obviously my kids should go. They love Disneyland? I looked over at Ethan. His face was pale, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, why doesn't Grandma think I deserve it? And at that moment, I saw red. I wasn't just getting those tickets back. I was about to teach my mother and sister a lesson they would never forget. I was furious. But I also knew one thing my mom and sister didn't. Those Disneyland tickets? They weren't transferable. My name was printed on them. Photo ID was required. And if my mom and sister thought they could just waltz into the park with them, they were about to get a very rude awakening. I called Disneyland's guest services, explained the situation. I also called my boss. She wasn't just understanding, she was livid. Those tickets were a reward for your work. You and Ethan deserve that experience. Let me handle this. And so, we waited. Because in just a few days, Karma was going to meet them at the gates. Saturday morning. My mother, my sister, and the twins arrived at Disneyland's VIP entrance. They were smug, probably thinking about the Instagram photos they'd post. Mom handed the tickets to the staff, already grinning. But then, the scanner beeped. The employee frowned. Can I see your ID? Mom blinked. Oh, we don't need ID. We have tickets. The staff member shook his head. These are VIP passes. They are non-transferable. They belong to Rachel Lewis. My sister froze. Mom tried to argue. But then, I walked up, with Ethan, and the look on their faces, priceless. There's something about watching someone's confidence collapse in real time, the way their face drops, the way their smile disappears. That's exactly what happened when I walked up, holding Ethan's hand, and locked eyes with my mother and sister. My mom's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Vanessa? She actually took a step back, like she'd seen a ghost. The staff member looked between us. Are you Rachel Lewis? I nodded and handed him my ID. Yes, and those are my tickets. He scanned my license, checked the system, then nodded. Everything looks good. You and your son are all set to enter. I turned back to my mom and sister. I believe you have something that belongs to me? They were speechless. But Ethan? Ethan looked up at me with pure admiration in his eyes. He squeezed my hand. Mom, thank you. I squeezed back. Always. And then, without another word, we walked through the gates, leaving them outside. Behind us, the chaos erupted. Wait, that's not fair, Vanessa snapped at the staff. We have tickets. The Disneyland employee, completely unfazed, simply repeated, These tickets belong to Rachel Lewis and her son. They are non-transferable. I'm afraid you can't enter. Linda turned to me. Her voice was suddenly sweet. Rachel, honey, please, it's just one day. Let the girls go in. I didn't even let her finish. No. Vanessa tried next. Come. On, Rachel. My girls were looking forward to this. I looked her dead in the eye. So was my son. Her mouth snapped shut. For the first time, they realized they had lost. Ethan and I stepped into Disneyland, leaving my mom and sister behind. I wasn't even angry anymore. Because this was Ethan's moment, and nothing was going to take it away from him again. We rode every ride. We met every character. We ate Mickey-shaped ice cream, laughed at silly shows, and skipped every long line with our VIP passes. At dinner, Ethan looked across the table at me. Mom, this is the best day of my life. And just like that, I knew. I had done the right thing. Later that night, after the fireworks, my phone rang. It was my mom. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, I answered. Her voice was quiet. Rachel, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. She kept talking. I never realized how much I made Ethan feel less important. That was the first time I had ever heard her admit it. Vanessa apologized too, though I knew it would take time before I could forgive her. But one thing was for sure. They would never steal from my son again. Because now, they knew what happened when they tried. A few days passed after our Disneyland trip. I didn't hear from my mom or my sister. No angry texts, no guilt-tripping calls, just silence. And honestly, it was kind of nice. But then, one Sunday morning, something unexpected happened. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard a knock at the door. Ethan was still asleep, exhausted from our magical weekend, so I opened it quietly. Standing there was my mother. She looked different, softer, almost nervous. She cleared her throat. Rachel, can we talk? I hesitated. But then I stepped aside. She walked in, glancing around like she hadn't been here 1,000 times before. We sat at the kitchen table. And for a moment, there was only silence. Then she took a deep breath. I messed up. I didn't say anything. She continued. I've spent my whole life playing favorites. I always put Vanessa first, and I never stopped to think about how that made you feel, or how that made Ethan feel. Her voice cracked a little. When I saw his face at the Disneyland gates, I realized what I had done. I crossed my arms. So why now? Why apologize? She looked down at her hands. Because for the first time, I saw you as a mother, not just my daughter, but a mother protecting her child. And I finally understood. That was the moment I knew she was telling the truth. I won't lie. Forgiveness wasn't instant. Trust doesn't just snap back into place. It takes time. It takes effort. But my mom started showing up. She called Ethan just to talk. She asked about his interests, his books, his favorite things. For the first time ever, she made an effort to get to know him. And Vanessa? She apologized too. She admitted she had always felt entitled because of how my mom treated her. Slowly, things started to change. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. A month later, something happened that made everything feel different. It was a Sunday morning. Ethan and I were in the kitchen, making pancakes, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there was my mom, holding a bag of groceries. She smiled. I thought we could make breakfast together. And behind her, Vanessa, with the twins. That morning, we all sat around the table, eating pancakes, talking, laughing, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like a family. That Disneyland trip taught me something. Not just about my mother, not just about my sister, but about myself. I learned that standing up for my son wasn't just about that one moment. It was about teaching him his worth, teaching him that he matters. And if that meant walking away from the people who refused to see it, then that was a price I was willing to pay. But in the end, they learned too. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory. So what do you think? Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have walked away for good? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you liked this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't given, it's earned.